Investor Intelligence provides general information only. You should consider seeking independent advice to see how this information relates to your unique circumstances. Please refer to the terms and conditions available at investorintelligence.com.au for more.
Welcome to this week's episode of Investor Intelligence, your weekly podcast on all things investment, hosted by me, Jacob Kearns. Anyone who's either owned an apartment or has lived in an apartment or any property with a shared common area will probably be aware that working with an owner's corporation can come with its own unique set of challenges. For this episode, we'll be outlining the things property investors and residents should be aware of, as well as the difference a good owner's corporation can make. With me today, I have Melissa Harvey, who is the director at the OC Guide. Welcome, Melissa.
Thank you.
So firstly, let's start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about your story and your current role at the OC Guide?
Yeah, sure. On a personal level, I'm a wife and mother. I've been happily married for over 30 years. I have 2 daughters, 2 baby granddaughters, and 2 staffy dogs who I love the most.
Awesome.
I'm happiest when I'm helping others or doing something that challenges me, or organising or planning something. Some would say that I'm dangerous when I have nothing to do. Professionally, I come from a project management background in the university sector. I have an MBA, but don't hold that against me. I'm always striving to make a difference and fighting for what is fair. It's what drives me in my current role as co-director of the OC Guide.
Awesome. And so how does your previous experience relate to what you do now at the OC Guide?
Well, the project management skills obviously help a lot. I actually stumbled into the OC industry a few years ago. I agreed to help out a friend who needed someone with my skill set. On day one, I didn't even know what an OC was. So for the first few weeks, the OC Act handbook was my constant companion. But nowadays, I pretty much have it memorised. But when I joined, I found an industry that was in trouble.
Okay.
My skills and motivation mindset to make a difference and bring about change served me well in the OC management role. I enjoyed the work, educating owners, putting strong governance and management into many owners' corporations that were on their last legs was very empowering. Over time, however, I struggled with the lack of ethics in the industry, so I joined forces with the OC Guide when invited and haven't looked back since.
Awesome. Let's start with, firstly, what an owner's corporation is. So how do they function and what role do they undertake?
Well, I could get into the legal talk, but I'm going to stick to layman's terms. An owner's corporation is a legal entity that is created when a piece of land has common property that its co-owners share. Examples include an apartment building, a townhouse, or a unit. So in a small block of units, the common property may only be the driveway. But in a large apartment complex, it could include the lifts, the lobby, or recreation facilities such as a pool. When you purchase a property, there's a plan of subdivision in place and your unit or apartment will be called a lot. And you automatically become a member of that owner's corporation. And sometimes you might be a member of more than one owner's corporation when you purchase a lot. For example, if you purchase a lot in an OC that has a car park, that car park will have its own OC. The reason for that is because some owners who own a lot don't have an assigned car park. Right. So if you're one of those owners who doesn't have a car park, obviously you don't want to pay for the expenses or share the expenses of lighting that car park. Yeah. So therefore, 2 owners' corporations are created. Another example might be you might have commercial lots downstairs and then you might have the residential buildings upstairs. Obviously, the commercial owners don't want to pay for cleaning the corridors in the residential area or pay for the lift. Yeah. So, and some owners' corporations can have up to 7 or 8 or 9 owners' corporations. It's all split. So each separate OC has its own budget that collects levies to pay for the expenses for their shared property.
And so does it get quite complex when
you're dealing
with that many OCs? And I mean, some examples can be, fairly straightforward, I guess, if there's just a couple of apartments, one OC. And we'll dive into the role, exactly how they function and the role that they undertake. But how does it work when it does get into those complex examples?
I think the biggest challenge is educating all the owners because they don't understand when they buy into an OC why there's multiple OC levy notices. They'll all of a sudden they'll buy a lot thinking, yes, they have to pay OC fees. And then all of a sudden they get every quarter, they get four invoices to pay levies. And they think that that's a mistake. So a lot of the work is educating them to understand why all the expenses are being split. So you'll have one owners corporation that all the members are, that all the lot owners are a member of. And that particular OC would generally pay for the insurance for the whole building. Then you work out which common property areas people have access to and who should be paying the expenses to pay for that piece of common property, and then you split them.
Right.
So, and in terms of the function of the OC, it's to manage that common property. So that group of owners, when they buy into a property with an OC, they automatically have roles and responsibilities to manage that common property. That includes maintaining and repairing the common property, organising insurance for the building and the common property, enforcing the rules and regulations, again, related to the common property, collecting levies from members to cover common property expenses, and resolving disputes among members regarding common property. I think the key here is the word common property. Sometimes people buy into an OC and something goes wrong in their unit, like, the plumbing has an issue, or it could be any multitude of things. The window seals are broken and all of a sudden they think that they can call the OC manager to fix that. Well, that's not the case. The OC only manages the common property, so any piece of land that all the owners share. And that's the biggest misconception when people buy into an OC. They think that the manager or the OC is responsible for everything, but that's not the case.
And so just to summarise, if you have an apartment, for example, with common area, you pay a levy every month, every year?
It's usually quarter.
Every quarter?
But it's up to, you have an annual general meeting every year and the owners will decide how often levy notices will get issued. But generally it's quarterly.
Yeah.
If it's a really small OC with only 4 lots, it might be annually or, 6 monthly.
Yeah.
But quarterly is usually the best because people can manage that bill. It might be $500 or $1,000, but when you're sending them one bill for, $2,000 or $4,000, it can become quite a burden financially for some.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. So that fee or levy then goes towards, from each owner, goes towards the maintaining of the common property. So whether it's mowing lawns or fixing...
all the expenses of the common property.
Yeah. And is there a difference between a strata manager, owners corporation, body corporate?
Well, generally when you use the words owners corporation, nobody really knows what you're talking about. But when you say body corporate, people understand straight away that, it's about units or apartments. In Victoria, the terms body corporate and owners corporation actually refer to the same thing.
Yeah.
Body corporate is the old terminology that was used before the Owners Corporations Act, which is the legislation, was introduced in 2006. So owners corporation is the new word, body corporate is the old word.
So essentially the same.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's just about, what word you use. And sometimes in different states, they use different terminology as well.
Yeah.
And in terms of a strata manager, that's the person who's appointed by the OC or by the body corporate to manage their property.
Right.
So, ideally when you're appointing a manager, you'll undergo a transparent tender process to ensure due diligence and that the person who's appointed is offering fair contractual terms and fees. And that's where our core business comes in. We're the only independent business in Victoria who offer this service to owners corporations free from commissions or kickbacks. We have no vested interest in the outcome and we manage the process as your appointed administrator only. We put in the hours, we charge you a fee for service via an invoice. There's no hidden commissions, no kickbacks, and it's completely transparent.
Yeah, I think that part is important too, right? The no commission when there's kickbacks can get a little bit corrupt, if you would use that word.
Yeah, absolutely. Like prior to 2021, so in 2021, new legislation was introduced, like the old legislation was updated. And there were a lot of things that used to happen that were quite corrupt that were ruled out. One of those things was, in terms of commissions, you now have to declare if you receive a commission. So in the management contract, when it's proposed, they have to declare any conflict of interest, including commission. So if they're getting commission from, say, the insurance broker or from the essential services provider or anyone at all, they have to declare that in the contract.
Right.
Whereas previously they didn't have to do that.
Yeah, interesting. And so going back to how this all functions. So again, with the example of an apartment owner paying their fees for the owners corporation to manage that complex, where does the committee come into that?
Well, with the committee, every year an annual general meeting is scheduled and all the owners are invited to attend. And at that meeting, all the owners will make decisions for the owners corporation. One of those decisions is appointing a committee. So if an owners corporation has more than 10 lots, you must have at least 3 members on the committee, but no more than 7. It can go up to 12, but that's a separate resolution that you have to pass. So all the members attend the meeting, although you'd like all the members to attend the meeting, but generally you need 50% of owners to attend the meeting for them to be a quorum so that decisions are immediate. But in most cases, only a handful of members attend, and sometimes nobody attends that meeting. People don't understand the importance of it.
Yeah.
So therefore, there's a lot of troubles that can come to no committee being elected or committee members that really shouldn't be elected being elected.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the members that do attend the meeting, a motion's put forward to elect a committee, and the people at that meeting have the responsibility to elect that committee. So any member who attends that meeting, or even if you don't attend the meeting, any lot owner can nominate for a committee position.
Right.
So let's say there's 7 people nominate, and that means 7 people can be elected. But if you've only 7 positions and 8 people nominate, then you have to go to a ballot and you have to elect.
Sounds very formal.
It is quite formal. And what's important to remember is that more often than not, property owners who nominate and are elected to the committee, they may have varying skills but no expertise in owners' corporations. So really the only qualification they have is that they're a property owner. It doesn't mean they have any experience in terms of managing and making decisions for, a multi-million-dollar asset, which it could be.
Yeah.
And most often they don't properly understand their role or their responsibilities. They're just volunteers' position and they have no accountability. The Owners Corporation Act, actually give committee members immunity from liability when they exercise the power of carrying out a function of the OC Act. So that immunity, therefore, opens the door for corruption. Yeah, so we've seen many instances where committees or committee members are awarding service contracts to themselves or family members.
Oh, wow.
And generally that's when we get contacted when a new lot owner might come onto the committee and go, what's going on? Why is person B's sister being the building manager and someone's aunt cleaning the windows and getting paid thousands of dollars to do so?
Oh, God.
That's why it's really important for, lot owners and investors to attend those annual meetings. To review the documents that get sent out before the meeting and really understand how the levies that you're contributing to the owners' corporations are being spent every year. And again, that's where we come in, the OC guide. When owners find out that things are going wrong and they really don't have the expertise either on how to handle it or understand what the legislation can do to protect them, they call on us because we do have that expertise and we can talk them through the steps, or they can engage us to do that work for them.
Yeah. No, I'm definitely starting to see the amount of things that can go wrong with dealing with this type of thing. With the committee itself, so what type of responsibilities do they actually have to take care of?
So yeah, the committee actually has the same functions as what the manager has, but the committee have to provide the instructions to the manager. So the committee's responsibilities include maintaining and repairing the common property or assisting with that.
Right.
Organising the insurance, enforcing the rules, collecting the levies and resolving disputes. So ultimately all the responsibility is with the committee, but they will hire a manager to act for them, but the manager can only act on instructions.
Yeah, it seems like there is some level of a skill set needed to carry out these responsibilities to a reasonable level. So it is interesting that you don't need any kind of, the only qualification, as you said, is you own the property to be elected to a committee a lot of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And another problem that we often see also is that the wrong committee are in power. I sort of touched a minute ago on how, committees can be corrupt. Committee members can be corrupt and award contracts to people that they shouldn't be awarding them to. That's against the Owners Corporation Act. But essentially a new lot owner might want to come into the committee and be part of that decision making, but they're blocked by the committee who are already in power.
Okay.
The reason, so what will happen is, let's say only 10 people turn up to the meeting and seven of them are already on the committee. Person number 8 or 9 puts their hand up and says, we want to be members, but those 7 people don't want a new member. So they all use their vote to block that member being elected.
Wow.
And this happens a lot. So when you get lot owners who find out that things are not quite as right as they should be and they try and get on the committee, it's almost impossible.
Wow.
And the manager 9 times out of 10 won't want to help them because they want that committee to stay in power because they have that responsibility to appoint the manager. They have a good relationship with that group of owners and they don't want to upset the apple cart.
Right. So that's a committee. Now, the owner's corporation manager could be dealing with a handful of apartments or in some cases 100, 200 apartments, which is essentially millions, tens of millions of dollars worth of property assets. What qualifications does an owner's corporation manager need to be looking after these assets?
That's the scariest thing. The OC manager needs no qualifications at all. Any person can register to become an OC manager at Consumer Affairs if they have no criminal conviction and are over 18. All they need is to purchase a professional indemnity insurance policy. A big portion of our business is assisting OC clients who are dealing with inexperienced, inefficient or corrupt management companies. And in terms of who appoints a manager is either appointed by the developer or by the committee. We find the most problems are with developer-appointed OC managers because in many cases, when we see the contract, we see that there are, terms and conditions and fees that can be up to triple the market value of the fees proposed in a fair and transparent tender process. So that's where we come in to try and get them out of those contracts or negotiate and mediate an agreement for a fairer contract.
Yeah.
While changes to the Owners Corporation Act in 2021 now prevents a contract being more than 3 years, previously contracts could have been up to 25 years in duration.
Oh, wow.
And some that were executed prior to the changes in 2021 are actually still in place. So we're getting contacted a great deal to try and help committees get out of those contracts, helping them with VCAT applications and that sort of thing. Because we know the legislation, so we know, the process to follow.
Yeah. Whereas
lot owners, again, we talked before about how they don't have a lot of OC experience. They don't know how to follow that process. So we come in and we help them. There's no proof, but we believe that a lot of those contracts were sold to the OC managers by developers. And if that's the case, that explains why the fees are a lot higher because the managers had to recoup those costs that they perhaps paid to the developer.
Right.
And what's sad is that even though legislation has changed, the practice of selling OC contracts, in our opinion, is still occurring today, even for 3-year contracts. We see consultants out there offering to find a new manager or manage a tender process for no fee. But you need to ask yourself, how does the consultant get paid? Does it mean the manager is paying the consultant a fee? Generally, yes. And if it is yes, the fees proposed are likely to be higher than what the market is paying so that the manager can recoup the fee that they paid to the consultant.
Yeah.
Whereas at the OC Guide, we take no commission. We have no vested interest in the outcome. We are just your hired administrator.
Yeah.
We charge our clients a fee, as we talked about before, via invoice at the end of the process. It's very transparent. Our fees are fair and reasonable and quoted up front. We've heard of some consultants collecting a fee equal to the first year's annual management fee, which our opinion is highway robbery. Because if the contract is worth, $200,000 a year and they've negotiated a 3-year contract, it means the consultant was paid $200,000 to hire that manager for you.
Yeah, it's a lot of money.
It is, absolutely. Another thing that's quite sad too is, we hear about, can't be proven, about under-the-table deals between managers and committees taking place to renew OC management contracts. So we've heard stories, for example, a case where the manager was allegedly paying committee members for their votes to renew the contract.
Oh, wow.
They don't want to lose the contract, so they say to the committee, well, at the next AGM when you vote to renew the contract, if you vote yes, because you only need the majority in the room, we'll give you $10,000 or something. Because if the contract's worth $500,000, it's actually absolutely worth it.
Yeah, and especially with what you were saying before, if there's a majority of the committee is already appointed and someone comes in and it's really hard to get that change to happen. There's majority taking the payments from the manager as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And investors in particular really need to be aware of who their committee are. Who is making the decisions on behalf of the owners' corporations, because that can affect your investment.
Yeah.
If there's a lot of money that you're paying in levies that is really just going to no one and not helping your investment prosper or going towards maintenance, well, then you really need to take steps to try and change that. And again, that's why we're busy. We do have a lot of people contacting us for help in getting out of those tricky situations.
Yeah. So, no, I guess that really summarizes why it's important for investors to be aware of the fees that they're paying. What other problems arise when dealing with owners' corporations?
Well, the property might not be being well maintained, and this can absolutely damage the return on your property investment. There could be lots of disputes and complaints regarding owners and tenants not abiding by the rules or the guidelines. This is not great for investors also because they end up with very unhappy tenants. There might be low budget being developed and approved, which ultimately will lead to special levies to cover their shortfall. Like I know investors like to think and plan ahead for what their overall annual expenses are going to be, and they would rely on the budget that's approved by the Owners Corporation each year to understand that. But if not enough money is raised to cover those expenses, all of a sudden they're getting an invoice out of nowhere to pay more money. The other thing is high arrears too. You know, if you're investing in a property where a lot of the owners aren't paying their levies, again, a special levy has to be raised to cover the shortfall.
Right.
Yep. You also need to be mindful about high insurance premium because there's a high claims history. So again, that comes down to management as well and, you know, having the proper committee to really manage those claims because sometimes it's not worthwhile putting in a claim. But if you've got multiple claims on your building, then your insurance premium could double or triple even though you haven't had a claim. There's also poor service and high management fees by the appointed manager. We've touched on that.
Yeah.
You know, you really got to understand what a fair market value is, and that's where a transparent tender process is the best way to go. You could have a corrupt or dysfunctional committee. And I think another big problem is lack of owner engagement, and therefore the manager or the property isn't being well looked after.
Okay.
And the thing that keeps coming up over and over again, especially on a new development, which we find a lot of investors do invest in, are defects. So if, as you all know, there's the first 10 years, you've got like a defect period, but if the development wasn't built properly, all these defects need to be taken care of. And you need someone who has a bit of expertise in how to manage that defect process, how you go about going to the building authority and going to VCAT to force the developer or the builder to rectify those defects.
Okay. And is that the committee that does that or the manager?
Well, it's the committee giving the instructions to the manager.
Right.
So the manager, again, as I said, they don't need any qualifications. Though generally you have managers who might be an accountant, so in a previous life, so they'll have some financial expertise. But it's not often that you find someone who comes from a building background who understands the legal process involved in relation to defects. So if your OC manager has legal qualifications, that's great because they do understand the legal process. So again, when you're hiring a manager, you want to find the right fit. If you're dealing with a legal matter, try and find a manager that has some expertise in legal matters. Yeah. If you're dealing with a financial problem with your OC, try and find an accountant. But otherwise, you could be hiring someone who has no qualifications, no education, and therefore don't have the skills to be able to properly manage or problem solve and get you the outcome that you want.
Yeah, that's so concerning, especially regardless of whether it's an investment or your home. It sounds like there's so many problems that could come up. So is it just easier to buy houses or invest in houses instead of apartments?
I don't think so because it comes down to affordability and reason for the purchase. An apartment or a unit is a great investment opportunity.
Yeah.
I think the important thing when you purchase a property in an OC is to understand what you're buying into. Read the Owners Corporation certificate documents very carefully and make sure you understand the financial status of the OC. This will be on the financial report provided with the certificate. What expenses does the OC pay for? Does it have a healthy bank balance? Is there a maintenance plan in place? How much is in the maintenance fund? If the OC has a healthy maintenance fund balance, you can be assured you won't be left paying for repairs and maintenance for issues that were not attended to prior to your purchase. So that's quite important. Is there any building orders on the building? This has been a big thing in the last few years. It's been in the media. There's lots of cladding orders that have been issued by councils for cladding that has to be removed, inflammable cladding. So understand, is there a building order? Because you don't want to be left with, 100,000 plus levy to replace or remove cladding after you purchase. So you really need to understand that. Is there anything in the AGM minutes that raises any flags? And again, the OC Guide can provide a service to review and provide analysis of these documents prior to your purchase. So we would highly recommend, we know what we're looking for.
Yeah.
We understand the documents, whereas a lot of stuff is hidden and you don't understand when you purchase, and then all of a sudden you're left with this huge bill or a property that needs maintenance that should have been done 6 years ago, and all of a sudden now you have to pay for it. You don't want to be in that position.
Yeah, no, definitely. So that's all, in terms of your due diligence, that's all stuff that you can do before purchasing the property.
Absolutely.
It seems like a no-brainer. Seems so important to do that due diligence, especially dealing with, $500,000 properties, whether it's a home or investment.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can hire a lawyer, and a lawyer can look at the documents for you. But that's going to cost a lot of money. Our fees are very fair and reasonable, and we know what we're looking for because this is our expertise. This is our specialty.
Yeah. What would you say in terms of the proportion of owners corporations out there that do things well versus not so well?
Well, in my business, most of the inquiries for OCs are due to OCs not being up to standard or experiencing issues. So I can't really comment on that.
Yeah.
One of the services we offer is to review the services provided by a manager. So, we then provide a report of our analysis that alerts the committee or lot owner to any issues or concerns that should be addressed. We've been offering tender management services for, just over 3 years now. And in the process, we've accumulated feedback from past clients about managers who have been offering great services. So, we know who the good ones are. We know who the bad ones are.
Yep.
We don't push you in any particular direction. We give you an apples to apples report and we don't exclude anyone, but we can at least point you in the right direction if you want us to. We've seen a fantastic shift in the level of services and fair fee proposals since commencement. Making managers accountable by including KPIs in contracts we negotiate has contributed to this improvement, we believe. As an unregulated industry, change is needed. The quality of manager can be very hit or miss.
Yeah.
We would like to see the state government legislating for strict regulations and perhaps various required qualifications in the future. I think this is, what needs to change in this industry.
And you mentioned in some cases you can implement KPIs for the owner's corporation. What KPIs would you look at implementing?
So they're mainly service related because at the moment, a lot of the standard templates that managers use, there's no KPIs in there whatsoever. So it's just that they have to abide by the Act. And The Act, basically, the only KPI is that you've got to act in the best interest of the owner's corporation. So how do you measure that?
Yeah.
If you want to terminate the contract for breach, how do you measure acting in the best interest? It's very difficult.
Yeah.
So the service KPIs that we put in are all mainly service related, responding to inquiries, providing documents in a certain period, providing an arrears report in a certain period, those sorts of KPIs, because currently there's none. So if you've hired a manager and you're trying to get some information and they don't respond in 3 weeks, well, that's okay because you've still got to prove they're not acting in the best interest. They might have a response to that.
Yeah, very subjective and vague.
Yeah.
Well, we've definitely outlined a lot of problems and things that can come up. And you've touched on how your Business the OC guide helps investors and homeowners manage owners' corporations. But in terms of your actual service level, what does that look like in terms of working with clients? What sort of clients do you work with and at what stage would they appoint you?
Well, I'll just talk about how the OC Guide helps property investors deal with owners' corporations.
Yep.
The OC Guide is 2 things. Firstly, it's a free online resource that provides an abundance of information and advice regarding OC matters. And secondly, we offer paid services to lot owners and committees. Our fiercely independent OC Guide Services Division was created in 2021 when so many inquiries were received by lot owners committee members who needed more than just information and advice. They wanted an independent entity to also do the work involved to reach an outcome. So some of the services that, we do is we for committees and lot owners in particular, we do manager reviews. So we do a complete analysis of the service the manager is providing to the owner's corporation and then offer feedback about what needs to be looked at more carefully.
Yep.
And then the committee can make a decision whether or not the manager is meeting expectations or whether they need to look for a new manager. Because sometimes you don't know, how do you know what you're looking for in terms of what is good service and what is not? What should they be doing? What should they not be doing? And we understand that very well, so we can provide that analysis that you need. We develop and manage tender processes for OC manager or building manager services. And again, that's for lot owners or committees. We prepare formal complaints and VCAT applications on behalf of owners. We prepare written reports needed for VCAT hearings. We offer project management services. We can chair annual general meetings, or we can offer mediation services or attendance at grievance meetings when disputes occur. But for investors, a big part of our business is attending AGM meetings as their proxy and providing a summary of what occurred, including information about any concerns that needs to be addressed. We find a lot of investors don't even attend the meetings and they don't know what's going on. They're not as interested in the goings on at the property. They just pay their levies. They're all about investment returns. But if things are going wrong, you could be wasting a lot of money and contributing levies that you needn't have done. So by sending us along to a meeting and acting as your proxy or being your representative, we look out for things and concerns and we bring them back to the table and say, well, this is a problem. You need to address this. How would you like us to intervene?
I think it goes back to what you said at the start, as well as about lack of education with a lot of people. Probably just aren't aware. When you pay this money, you think or hope that it's being managed properly because you're paying this money. So, I can understand how someone can just, pay the money and expect things to be going okay. But after this conversation, it certainly seems like it's not always the case.
Yeah, and one of the other things too is if there's an owners corporation that is experiencing problems, and you don't have the time to act as a committee member, you can absolutely provide a proxy and hire us to act as a committee member on your behalf.
Okay.
So therefore, we can take the time to attend all the committee meetings for you and you can have a vote in the decisions of the owners corporation, to protect your investment.
So at what point would someone engage you guys?
I think if someone needs independent advice to determine if, a manager or the owners corporation or the committee is following legislation and meeting acceptable expectations, I think for a committee, if your owners corporation contract or building manager contract is coming up for renewal, if you've been unable to get an outcome regarding an ongoing OC matter and you need some help, if you need help or some advice to terminate an existing contract, or if your committee needs training to understand their roles and responsibilities or the legislation in general. We've done a lot of committee training. A lot of owners corporation committees have hired us to come in and provide the committee members with a full training session so that they properly understand what their roles and responsibilities are. Mm-hmm. Or if you want help drafting a formal complaint or a VCAT application, we can do that for you.
It sounds like it's pretty much anything to do with an owner's corporation. You've got either free content around that or you can handle that.
Absolutely.
So despite having helped countless people deal with owners' corporations, I'm sure you've heard some horror stories or dealt with some horror stories. Do you have any that you'd like to share with us? Yeah,
we've certainly assisted with getting people out of a lot of horrible situations to reach good outcomes. We could talk about the developer, appointed manager that had zero experience and did no work at all. This beautiful new building had 20 apartments, was just left from day dot. The owners didn't have any expertise, so they didn't understand who could help them. There was rubbish that had piled up in the basement and outside for weeks. There was no cleaning services to the corridors or to the common areas. The lift was broken. I ended up being contacted, who found us, via the website, by one of the owner residents when the appointed manager continued to not respond to any calls for help. I had to organise, and they didn't know what to do. So I organised a petition to terminate the manager. I held a meeting to elect a committee, found a new manager to start immediately. And in the interim, I also called in some favours to get the rubbish collected on credit and cleaning services started. And that was or when I was first contacted, I think it was Christmas Eve. So all that had to occur while I should have been holidaying somewhere. I was actually out in an Airbnb miles away, driving to the nearest supermarket so that I could get some coverage to try and make some calls and help these people out because I just felt so bad.
Yeah.
And again, that's a developer appointed manager. There's another one, a developer appointed manager who executed a ridiculous 10-year contract with a manager only months before the legislative changes in 2021. And we helped mediate an agreement with better terms and lower fees. So I think that saved that particular owner's corporation over $6 million.
Far out. That's, again, a lot of money.
And that was a lot of money. I think that's probably, my shining moment in terms of being able to, rather than go to court, which would have cost thousands and dragged on for years, I used my mediating skills, negotiation skills for them to come to the party and come up with a fair agreement rather than everybody ending up in court. There's the manager who disappeared and left the OC with no insurance in place. So if something had happened, that would have been pretty bad.
Yeah.
But I think another good one is the OC manager who appointed himself to manage an OC with fees that were double the market average, where he owned half the lots and refused to accept that he had a conflict of interest. So I had to represent the other lot owners at VCamp to have another manager appointed.
Yeah.
Because even though I tried to negotiate and explain to him, you have a conflict of interest. You can't appoint yourself and take fees when you own half the lots. And he goes, oh, but I'll get one of my employees to manage the building. He didn't understand. No, but you're the owner of the company and the management company and the owner of the lots. You can't do it.
Yeah.
But he just didn't get it. I think the really good one too is the gun shop owner who fired the OC manager and decided he'd manage the OC, but he didn't even know what the OC Act was.
Oh, no.
So for weeks there was a long list of unattended maintenance and matters that just kept spiralling. And again, it came down to me educating him to help him understand you can't do this. You don't have the qualifications, you don't have the experience. And it came down to he just didn't want to pay the levies. And then I had to explain to him, you still have to pay levies. The levies are the expenses of the common property. So it really does come down to education and, they just don't understand. We've helped multiple OCs follow the process and take correct steps to terminate a manager because a lot of managers, they know that committees and owners don't know what steps to follow or the right boxes to tick to have them terminated. So they put all these hurdles in place and they make it really difficult. But then when we're hired, we know the steps, we know the legislation.
Yeah.
So when they come up against us, they know they're done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so do you think there should be change in terms of the qualifications that a manager needs?
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, I think the state government need to step in. It's an unregulated industry, and some firm regulations need to take place so that managers, can't keep doing what they've been doing. It has shifted. I think when we first started, it was a lot worse. But managers, because some new managers have come in who are doing the right thing, it's forced the other managers who weren't doing the right thing. It's forced their hand, and for them to be competitive, then they have to toe the line.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, Melissa, for coming on the podcast. It's been really great. I've learned a lot, and it's certainly an area of investment that can confuse a lot of people, or as we discussed, aren't necessarily educated on, but so important, especially when you're dealing with assets that are so high value and often a big chunk of someone's net worth. So if anyone listening is interested in getting in contact with the OC Guide, we'll certainly provide your contact details on our website. We'll provide a link in the description, but you can find that at investorintelligence.com.au/the OC Guide. And make sure you have subscribed to Investor Intelligence to keep up to date with all things investment. Thanks, Melissa.
Thanks so much.
If you found this episode or any of our episodes helpful, please make sure to share and leave a rating to help us reach more people on their investing journeys. And of course, subscribe to be notified when new episodes drop. Make sure to follow the podcast on Instagram at Investor Intelligence Podcast. You can find links to our other socials in the show notes, including a link to the Property Mentors weekly blog. If you're ready to get your property portfolio in shape for financial freedom, check out Luke's latest book, Property Fit. You can get yourself a copy at www.propertyfitbook.com.au.